I also thought that it would be fun if we talked about how the software was made and what the controller looks like, because I haven't shown that yet. For the most part, prototype hardware is really nothing to look at. As you can see, it just looks like a bunch of random things on what's called a breadboard. The real secret with this is that big green chip on this side. That's the microcontroller that has the software. So this is really about software. The rest of it is a MIDI cable, which is in the back of all or most synthesizers. And then there's a small photocell on there, and that's giving me that light sensitivity. And you can also see where the knob is hooked in. You can also see the top of my synthesizer, and the big black box with the blinking red light is what's called a MIDI merger. So I have additional equipment plugged in controlling this synthesizer. So, in talking about the software, it would have been really easy to show it with a deck of cards, but I don't have a deck of cards. I did have all this nail polish, so I thought I would use that instead. So, in this box would be all the notes of the scale, and because it's my nail polish, I've got a couple top coats, maybe there's 4. So there's a couple, and I think there's 2 blacks, might be 3 blacks. So there's some weighting, and what the software does is every section of the scale is kind of considered one person, and everybody gets to first pick a color randomly. They don't get to look, they just pick one. And then they make note of what time it is that they picked it. So they look at the clock. And then they decide, I'm going to wait 2 seconds and then put this back and then pick a new one. So 1, 2, they'll put it back, and then it has to pick a new one. It might pick the same one. Here I picked another top coat, so it would play another note. That's the same note. So we put it back after a certain amount of time, and then it would grab a new one. And this is not a top coat. It's very different. So it might wait 8 seconds and then put it back. So there's 4 individuals all doing this at different times. The only thing that's agreed upon is the very first note. Everybody picks at the same time. But then part of the process is that everyone gets to pick a new time interval before they choose a new nail polish. So once that's been decided, that note has a number assigned to it. At least that's how synthesizers think of it. And that needs to get turned into a signal that the synthesizer can read. So the first thing it needs to be told is, I'm about to tell you to play a note. That's called a note on the signal. And then you can tell it what note you want to play, and then you tell it what velocity you want to play it at. So if you play a note really hard, it sounds very different than if you play it softly. That'll be something that I explore later. It'd be nice to get all of these people varying their velocities just a little bit, so you get kind of different timbres. When it does that, it's also checking the photocell and saying, I'm getting, this much light, and that means that all my effects levels need to be here. And it's inverse, so the more light, the less effects go on. So that's using what's called a mapping function. So it's, I don't really know how to explain it past it's a mapping function. If I say 0, then you say 127, and if I say 1024, then you say 0, and everything in between gets kind of divided up in that way. That's the way that the software is working currently. Problems that I had before with it were in that choice. If it would pick one, how would it wait but not stop the software? you know, totally, so that other notes couldn't be picked at that same time because you're in this waiting period. I picked one and now I'm waiting for 4 seconds, so that the whole computer shuts down and waits for 4 seconds to do the next step. These little Arduinos, they can't multitask. They can only do one thing, so in order to make it do lots of things like it's doing right now, we avoid using the delay function and we instead use this timer, this clock that's going on inside of it all the time. So it's constantly just looking at that clock and seeing how much time has passed, and then if enough time has passed, that's when that event can take place. It's also interesting to note that when I wrote this idea of it, you know, grabbing a new note every time, it doesn't actually start by grabbing one, it starts by always putting whatever it has back, and then it grabs a new note. So step one is actually put whatever you have in your hands back. If you've got nothing, there's nothing to put back, and then grab a new note. Make up a new time that you'll put this next one back, and then repeat that. So you make up a time, I say 2 seconds, 1, 2, I'll put this back, and then you repeat that again. Grab a new note, make up a time, count to 1, and then you put that back. And having that order different really helped, because what would happen is it would either stall the program, or it would grab a color, and then every millionth of a second, or not millionth, like 10,000ths of a second, it would just keep grabbing new colors until it finally came to that first time, and then it would put that first one away. So that results in a very interesting sound because it's playing 16,000 notes at the same time, which is its own pitch. It's actually kind of useful. Maybe I'll use that later. Anyhow, that was my software issue. That's how I solved it, and I hope that my abstract example helps explain how I write these kind of things. It helps me.